Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Okay, good morning, everybody. Um, this is John Hall, and welcome to the first webinar of my series of 8. And if you folks have any topics that you're also interested, shoot me an email and we can add it on. One thing I want to say before we start is that thank you so much for your really, really kind words. And this is not about sales. This is about just giving back and being a part of helping everybody through these interesting times. And I've been through this with 2001. I've been through this with the crash. It's going to rebound, and there's going to be a lot of pent up energy in both remodeling and how we live our lives and things like that. There's just so much interest, and I'm glad to be a part of it. One other piece of housekeeping is that my kitchen design class is still a go. There's a lot of people that have signed up for that. We're going to do that virtually. That's going to be April 18th, starting at 9 o'clock all the way up until about, virtually it'll probably go about 3 or 4 hours. And then the webinar that day, which is a good one, they're all good ones, but that is going to be the accessorizing the kitchen, which is a real important part. We'll talk about accessories and things like that. So, okay, so let's get started. What we're going to do today is we're going to talk about selecting cabinetry, and it's a big part of the remodel, whether it be in the kitchen, whether it be in the bathrooms, or one of the things that I do a lot of and is home offices, and that's actually going to be a webinar. There's a big demand for the home offices, and I'm doing a lot of those right now. So it'll also apply to that. So if you have any questions, you can tap me a question. I'll either answer as I go or, towards the end as we go through this. And then please feel free to email me with any thoughts. This is my first ever webinar, so hopefully we're going to do good for you and you'll keep coming back. And if you ever have anything, let me also give you my phone number that if anybody has any questions that they want to ask me one-on-one and speak to me, 216-870-2644. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do when we are selecting cabinetry, okay, is talk about the styles. So there's 4 basic styles. If people have seen me and have talked to me in the past or heard me talk at the shows, we talk about those 4 styles. So before we talk about actually talking about the cabinetry, we need to get a feel of the style that we're looking for. We can go on Houzz, we can go on Pinterest and start gathering the ideas. But here's a kitchen that I have recently completed. And modern is very, very popular today, whether it be the laminates, whether it be the lacquers, and so could be acrylics, could be anything. But the modern is just a very simple, elegant, elegance through simplicity. And you can see this kitchen here has a very European, clean, simple influence. So that's modern. That's going to be one of the 4. And we're going to have to know this a little bit as we go into this, determining when you start looking for your cabinetry. Here's another modern bathroom. This was an award-winning bathroom that I did last year out in Novelty. And you can see, look at the cabinetry, the seam, just clean, simple lines as you go through that. And it's carried through into the tile, did interesting things with the lighting. So there's the touch for modern. Transitional. Okay, transitional is going to be a big player when we come up and start talking as we go through the styles. It is the most popular style, and I'll talk about that a little bit when we get into the cabinetry, the construction, and things like that. But again, what you're doing now is you're going back and you're taking this philosophy of that modern, that simple, elegant look, and you're now putting a little bit of traditionalism onto it. Look at now, all of a sudden, we're going to start using more shaker style doors or things like that. But you don't see a lot of detailing, a lot of heavy crown molds, and a lot of different types of moldings and things like that. So it's just much more of a simple type of feel. Here's a bathroom. These are all, by the way, projects that I have recently completed. Here's a bathroom that's hot off the press on the east side. And again, taking a very traditional door, shaker style door, and going and having the term frameless is going to come up very shortly, but taking a frameless application, and that's giving you just a nice, clean, simple, elegant look. Country. Here's one of my favorite country kitchens. This is a kitchen that was done about, time's flying, about a couple of years ago. And with the country, one of the feels with country, like if you say to me, give it a one-word definition, I would say warmth. Look at the beauty and warmth to this kitchen. And if you look up close on the island, we're going to talk about glazing and things like that in a little bit. But look what was done to the paint. There was like a dry brush glazing put on that to add warmth to an otherwise standard paint. Look at the warmth of the floor and things like that. Okay. And then we go traditional. And then we take traditional here. And again, that's a touch of class. So one of the things that we're going to now turn the corner on, and I just want to show you while we're on these slides, is go look at these last two slides. Okay. If you can look very closely, okay, right over here, do you see that these cabinets are framed? Okay. And let's look at the next slide. See the framework around these cabinets. This is very, very important to understand as we're going to go on with this presentation. Now what I want to do is go back a couple slides. See what's missing? You don't have any framing. So you have your framed cabinetry and your frameless. So country, that country feel and that traditional feel, there again, you see no frame, okay? You see the frame, you see the framework. So I do a lot of, I get work all over. In fact, these kitchens and bathrooms are all over Northern Ohio. And it's pretty much a mixture. People that have, this was the kitchen right here is in a Century home down in Hudson. And so what I did was kept the integrity and the character of the space and matched the surrounding architecture. And that's why we went with that really traditional look there, okay? Here, if you look at this one, which is interesting, this is the same house that had that transitional bathroom, but she wanted to bring a little more traditionalism into here. So what we did was we went and used the inset framed cabinetry to create a little more of a classical feel, and still did a little more, some little tweaking here and there with the hardware and the faucets and things like that. A little more on the typical and a little bit on the modern side. Okay, so that gives us the feel of the four styles. Now, do you need to know your style exactly as in the initial planning process? No, but what I want you to start doing is when you start getting on house and that is I want you to start looking for that frame. One of the things when you see that frame, you do not need to have hardware. The hardware does not need to be there, the hinges and things like that. Today's framed cabinetry, you do not have to have that because a lot of people don't like that. Okay, so let's move on now to when we start the shopping process and going out and starting to talk to people. You may have not. People that have heard me talk or people that have worked with me in the past, they all relate it to, you know what, John, how much do cabinetry cost, or how much does a kitchen cost? And I said, it's just like buying a car. Where do we want to go shop today? Do we want to go look for the Toyota Camry? Do we want to look for the BMWs? Do we want to look for, the Lexuses? Everything is there's going to be little bits in every little thing, and you have to pick and choose where you're going to want to put your money, okay? So we have three types of cabinets that are going to be on the market. The first one is stock cabinetry. We're going to talk about each of these in detail, but you have the first one being stock cabinets. Then you have one that you may have not heard about in the past, but it's very popular. It's a very popular one with me, and that's called semi-custom cabinets. And then we have a third one that's called custom cabinetry, which you pretty much would understand the stock and the custom, but what is that semi-custom? So we'll talk about that all of them. Okay, so let's go to stock. Stock cabinetry. And don't automatically say to yourself, oh, if I get a stock cabinet, I'm getting an inferior cabinet. That's not the case. There's some good stock cabinets out there. And then there's also going to be some cabinets that you really don't want to get involved with. that the wear and tear over the 4 to 6 years, you're going to be replacing them again. But if you go after a good stock cabinet, you know, for places like bathrooms, laundry rooms, home offices, or if you get a really good one, you could get involved in the kitchen with it. But you have to understand what you would be dealing with. Okay, so number one, we would have limited door styles. I personally represent all of these, so I'm very well attuned to the flexibility and what I can do and what I can offer my clients. Another one would be limited woods. We're going to talk about woods in detail coming up. Limited finishes. Minimal flexibility to cabinetry. I don't know if I should have used the word minimal or I should have used the word none. But if there is any flexibility, it would be absolutely minimal. Now, what does that mean? Well, let's say you want to put an oven in and you come to me and say, you know what, John, I have a bad back. I don't want to be bending down on the oven. Could you design it so that that oven can be raised a little bit? Well, with semi-custom and custom cabinetry, absolutely. You know, we take a tape measure. You guys show me where you bend over, where you're comfortable. You know, that's a great application. The other thing too, let's put that into a bathroom application. What about, you know, you don't want that vanity at that 30 inches that you've all grown up with. It's too low. But, you know, a husband is on the taller side, a wife is on the shorter side, and you want a good in between. Why not a vanity at maybe 32, 33 inches? That's where you will have a little bit of issues with your stock cabinetry. Now, there's ways a good designer can work around that. I could come back and say, well, you know what, why don't we just raise the cabinet up and then I increase the height of the toe kick or something. So there's ways around some of the stuff, but generally it's going to be much more limited. And then a big advantage of the stock cabinetry would be the pricing. You know, so you would have good pricing, and naturally you would have shorter lead times because the stuff's already basically produced, and you just get in there and you just you know, get it delivered and picked up. So that's basically stock cabinetry. Okay, here's one that, again, this is probably one of my, at least half of my sales would be the semi-custom. So before I read down this, basically what semi-custom is, it's going to be a more taking off on the stock. It falls right between the stock and the custom. And a lot of these, let's say, manufacturers will have an area where 80% of it is going to be in stock sizes. Now, what are sizes of cabinetry? Cabinetry basically runs 3-inch increments. So you go and look, cabinetry starts at 9 inches. Then it'll be 12 inches wide. Then it'll be 15. Then it'll be 18, and so on and so forth. Semi-custom cabinetry will break that rule. And so generally speaking, what they'll do is they'll say, okay, we don't want fillers all around our kitchen. Can we have a cabinet that's 13 inches wide instead of 12 inches wide? Yes, they will do it for us, but you'll pay the price just a little bit. It's not going to be a deal breaker, but you'll pay the price and say, maybe pay an extra 20% on that cabinet to do it. So that's what semi-custom will do. Now, all of a sudden, remember we talked about that oven cabinet? Now we can go and take care of that. Or let's say you want a TV in the kitchen, but you don't want it exposed. Can we do pocket doors? Or another one. One of the things that trends that seems to be coming around, appliance garages disappeared. They absolutely disappeared over the last 10 years because you folks did not like those timbers and raising up, you know, the timbers for the appliances. Now there's different things that we can do. We can have flip up doors, we can have retractable doors, and you'll find a lot of that starting in the semi-custom. You will not find that in the stock. So now with semi-custom, more door selections all of a sudden, more wood selections. You can introduce a little bit more of the specialty finishes that we're going to talk about. There's what I talked about, changing the cabinet sizes at a charge. Much more paint selections. So now what happens with the stock, you may get maybe 2 or 3 whites, you may get all of a sudden a blue, a gray, a black. Now we can get into, with the semi-custom, they'll all have expanded paint programs. The cabinet manufacturer that I represent, you know, you can use the Sherwin-Williams color palette, you know, so you'll have much more selections with that. By the way, one of the things, I don't know if who heard me at the show, but the color of the year is with Sherwin-Williams is navel. and the blues are very popular right now. Now, as far as the custom pieces, they will do a limited amount. So some of them may say, okay, per order, you can do 3 to 4 custom pieces. And custom piece could be maybe building a TV into a wall cabinet, or, you know, there could be on and on examples of custom pieces. So they will start to do, or a hood. Another thing that I'm on a stretch of, there's people, a lot of people that are asking me, John, can I have a wood hood in the kitchen? You know, instead of just using a standard wood hood out of the catalog, can I customize it a little bit to make it unique just for you? And I can start doing that with the semi. Generally good quality. You'll find that one of the things that with semi-custom cabinetry, it is going to be an a la carte system. So when all of a sudden you go to stock, that's the way the drawer is. You go to semi-custom, and we're going to talk about all this coming up with construction, but now all of a sudden we're going to have our option with drawer boxes. We're going to have our option with drawer glides. They're going to come at a basic price, you know, like a starting point, but you can a la carte decide where you want that quality level to end up with. So you'll be in good shape, you know, with the construction if you want to invest in it. And then generally great pricing, you know, it's the Toyota Camry of the world. So you can get in there and, you know, have good pricing with it. Okay, now we get into custom. Customs, basically with custom, what I say it is, and how I have a way in working with it, is that it's on a wood pile. I can do what I want. I'm working with a beautiful project right now, a couple of home offices where, you know, where do we want the files, and, you know, how do we want the printer in the home office? Do we want the printer exposed? Do we want it to be able to pull out? Do we want to, how high is the printer? You know, and so on, and then finishes. You know, we look at the wood floor in the house, and I have a sample in my car I brought back of the wood floor, you know, so we can get a stain that we can tweak it and we can do things, door styles. You know, I just finished a job over here on the east side, and the folks said that, you know what, John, we want to buy American. We want to support local. You know, so I had my cabinet manufacturer down in Millersburg, you know, work with me. And we made a door style that is very European, and we even tweaked the stains. And so you have complete 100% flexibility. So that you have, create your own doors, you can't create your own woods, you can get more exotic woods if you want them, unlimited finishes, maximum flexibility, generally more expensive and longer lead time. So you'll find that, but that's something. So where do you want to be at the end of the day with the quality factor, the flexibility factor, and the budget? And that's where people like me guide you through all this. Okay, now let's start talking a little bit about construction. This is going to be a decision. This goes back to so we know we have stock, we know we have the semi-custom and the custom. The stock is not going to give you good, what I refer to as good framed cabinetry, what people are really looking for today. You're pretty much going to have to start with the semi-custom when I show you the frame. Then we have full overlay, and then we have frameless. Now, sometimes people come to me and they'll say, you know what, John, am I getting a better cabinet with frame versus frameless? And what do all these mean? So let's talk about them. There it is. Okay, so framed cabinetry. Basically, we start out with a box, whether it be framed or frameless. So you can see we have a box. We have a bottom, 2 sides, we have a top, we have a drawer. Now, with frame cabinetry, what's going to happen is they're actually going to take and put a frame right on the front. To remember the country and to remember the traditional. That's what gave us, okay, that traditional or that country look by having that frame. If you want it to look like a piece of furniture, you want it to look like, you know, a very traditional architecture of the house, from the butler's pantry carrying it through into the kitchen, things like that. So that would be the framed. And then you go to the frameless, and if you remember that transitional, and if you remember all of a sudden that that modern, you're getting a much cleaner look. And you notice that the doors are the same. So whether it's going to, in this picture, whether you have the framed or the frameless, it's just going to give you that little, it's going to tweak. It's going to be that, people, again, that have heard me, we talk about the teeter-totter effect. The teeter-totter effect is very, very important. I always draw for my clients at teeter-totter. Do you want it to go, the teeter-totter, do you want it to weigh down more traditional? Do you want it to weigh down more contemporary? So that's where basically what transitional is, and we teeter-totter it. Like, you remember that bathroom that I showed you, that the one was more transitional, the one was more in the contemporary, even though she had the inset. It's because how we accessorized it. So that's important to understand. So you have your framed, you have your frameless. Now, if you go back, you say, John, what does that full overlay mean? What full overlay is where maybe a manufacturer does not offer totally frameless. They'll have a frame, but the door will cover most of the frame to give you the illusion of it being frameless. I am not a big proponent of this, and the reason I'm not is I tend to be a little anal in that, and you get more gaps between the doors, because if you have a full overlay with that type of hinging, the door cannot cover pretty much the entire box. So when you put a full overlay kitchen in, you're going to have a lot of, maybe up to 7/16 of a gap in between all your cabinetry. So I'm not a huge believer of the full overlay, but it's going to be out there. It's going to be a term that you may be presented with. But basically, it's going to be the framed or the frameless. Okay, frame cabinetry and frameless. There it is. So you see it up close and personal here. Now, this one on the left, I did the hinges there. Now, there may be times where you want to use the hinges. Let's say you have a piece of furniture that you really want to have an old world effect to it, or things like that. But 95 to 98% of the time with your frame cabinetry, you're not going to be using an exposed hinge. One of the things with the that'll be coming up, we'll talk about in a couple slides, is the cabinetry when you do a frame of the doors actually being inset in. And that's called inset cabinetry. So when people do frame cabinetry today, it's usually to get that inset furniture feel. So one thing I need to tell you though, you don't need to have one or the other in the kitchen. There's a lot of times where I'll do both framed and frameless in the same kitchen. Now, where would that come into play? Well, let's say we want to have more of a clean feel around the kitchen, but can we select maybe one or two pieces to be framed? We could, how about the island? You may say, can I have the island look like a piece of furniture? You know, I want that clean look, that transitional look going around, but can I have that island have that look like a piece of furniture? Then all of a sudden, I'll maybe take the same door style, change the finish, and then go with the framed inset cabinetry. So you can go and mix and match. Or a lot of times what I like to do is pull the sink base forward. And by pulling the sink base forward, I can put furniture feet on it and I can have that be inset. So it doesn't have to be one or the other in the kitchen. You can do both. But that's a good example there of what a frame cabinetry looks like and what the frameless looks like. Okay, so what are some of the pros and cons and things like that? Okay, so with the face frame, with the frame cabinet, it works with the inset doors, which we're going to talk about. It works with standard overlay doors. We're going to talk about that. The smaller opening. So this is interesting. People say, do I lose space with a frame cabinet? Not necessarily, but what happens is your opening to the cabinet becomes smaller. So if you have a frameless cabinet, okay, when you open it up, there it is. You don't have any obstruction. When you open a framed cabinet, you're going to be basically on your opening into the box, you're going to be about 1.5 inches smaller. So it takes up, you have that smaller opening. Takes up more space. I don't necessarily know that to be really true. That's really splitting hairs. Cannot adjust hinges. Okay, here's one. I don't know if any of you folks are on a lake, but if you're on a lake, get this framed inset cabinetry out of your vocabulary. Because with wood, these cabinets are going to expand and contract. And then in the summertime, when you have all that humidity off of a lake, or even here in the Chagrin Valley where I am, you know, you go down into the valley here by the popcorn shop and you take some of these houses down right there on the river, there's a lot of humidity down there. And I know from experience, so that would be disaster to be putting a inset cabinet down there. So that's something to think about. And the reason I'm saying that you can't adjust the hinges is that there's no flexibility, you know, as far as adjusting those things. And also, if you're a do-it-yourselfer, it's very difficult to install. You really have to know what you're doing to install a framed inset cabinet. Okay, frameless. We have the wider opening, easier access to the inside, takes up less space. The hinges are adjustable, and the hinges will attach to the side of the box. So if you go back here and look, I don't know, you can't, no, they don't showing the hinges there, but we'll see that coming up, that they actually attaching right to the side of the box of the cabinet. And then you have your full overlay, works with the full overlay doors, usually made of the similar materials, and you work with the concealed hidden hinges on the full overlay. Okay, so that's basically the between the framed and the frameless. I would say 90% of it's going to come down to the style that you want. You know, do you want more of that clean? I will sell about, I just picked up another cabinet line this week, a real line I'm excited about, and they do not sell the inset. And he asked me, what percent of it is your sales? And I'll say maybe 10%. So it's a very limited part of my sales, but it's still out there. Okay, now cabinet construction. Now all of a sudden we've gone and we've tire kick and we've gone to the auto dealership and we've all of a sudden talked about, you know, the colors and how it looks on the outside and the beauty of it, but now we need to tear this apart a little bit. Okay, so here are the things to understand with the cabinetry. What are the sides and what are they made of? What's the drawer box material? Drawer box thickness, drawer box construction. What's the cabinet interior? And what are my options? And then what do we do with exposed ends? So let's talk about it. Okay, there's a cabinet. It's a framed cabinet right there. And so let's look at what we're dealing with. When we talk about the cabinet construction, you have two options. First of all, get out of your vocabulary solid wood. There's no such thing as a solid wood cabinet. It's impossible. The cabinet, now with the true term, if somebody really wanted to present that term to you, would be is an all wood cabinet. So all wood would be plywood sides, and it would be solid doors and things like that. That is an all wood cabinet. The other option for your sides is what is called MDF or particle board. Do not let MDF or particle board dissuade you. I'm not talking about flake board. I'm not talking about the stuff you would use in an inexpensive stock cabinet that your shelves rip out and rollouts. I'm talking about a very high density particle board. The Europeans are using that. They've always used that. And I've sold that with the Europeans for years and years and years. The Americans use it. The Americans will give us, most manufacturers, starting at the semi-custom into the custom, are going to give us that option between semi-custom, between the plywood and that high density particle board. So I wouldn't rule out high density particle board. There are going to be people out there, and I'll get them maybe once or twice a year, say, you know what, I want all wood. Don't even talk to me. That Hudson job, he didn't even want to talk about it, you know. And then when we talked about wood floors, engineered flooring besides solid flooring, you know, even though, and that's for another day, but even though engineered flooring to me is much better than the solid flooring, some people just don't want to listen about it. Okay, so that would be the sides. Now, the sides of cabinetry, usually the thickness usually comes two different thicknesses. When you're going to go frameless, the thickness of your sides, 99% of the time is 3/4 of an inch. Whether it be the MDF or the plywood. You go into the frame construction, usually your sides are 5/8 of an inch. Again, and usually when you go into your frame construction and you do the inset cabinetry, they're going to be, you know, a lot of them are going to be plywood versus the MDF on that. Okay, what else can I look at here? We're going to talk about the drawers in the future. That's pretty much it on that slide. Okay, so now let's talk about drawers. This is interesting now. Okay, so this is something that you have to determine what's important to you. When you go and start looking, remember the semi-custom, okay? When you go to a semi-custom cabinet, they're going to start with A, which is basically going to be, you know, still going to give you the dovetail, but it's going to be a machine dovetailed finish. The drawer boxes are usually going to be maybe 1/2 inch to 5/8 wide. Some of them will use plywood and tape the top edge. Some of them may use all wood, you know, whether it be poplar, birch, or maple, whatever. Okay. And then all of a sudden, for an upgrade, you can go to 3/4 inch and you can go into the true dovetailing and you get a nice box there. I will tell you this, between A and B, with the way they're manufactured today, you're going to get 30 years out of each one. So it all depends on, what I'll do is if it's in a real high traffic area like a kitchen, I will say, you know what, I'll price it out for them. I'll say, here it is, show it to them. You can't go wrong with A, but if you want more of a solid look and feel and aesthetics, invest the money in B. If we're doing a bathroom or a laundry room or some other area, okay, then A is absolutely perfect. Now, one of the things too that I always promise my clients, I watch your pocketbook closer than you guys do, or at least as close as you do. So I am going to strategically tell you where you should be putting the money and where you shouldn't be. And I think you guys really appreciate me for that. C is a really interesting one. Look what's happened over the last 2 years, become very popular. Walnut drawer boxes. Can you see having a beautiful white painted kitchen and open it up and see the beauty of that walnut? Really gorgeous. When you get into your custom end, I don't know many semi-custom that offer that, but when you get up into that custom end, most manufacturers are going to offer you the walnut drawer box, and then it gets carried through. Hopefully you guys are going to join me, and I'm doing an okay job, and you're going to join me down the road and we talk about accessorizing. You're going to see a lot of this, the accessories that are going to be coming now in walnut. And then something else that's interesting that's out there that's very popular with the Europeans is they have some really unique systems that fit into and be able to accessorize into this cabinetry. And if you look at D, look at the metal. Now we can do with metal drawer boxes, and we can have all these components that can go into these drawers today that can go and allow us to, to really organize and have place. In my talks, I always talk about mise en place. Everything has a place, and it allows us to. So the metal drawer boxes with the more modern styles and things like that are an option. Not very popular when I sell American cabinetry, but with my Europeans, they come pretty standard with the metal boxes or the glass sides and things like that. Okay, wood species. These are the different woods that we have out there available to us. The more you go up the ladder, the more they're going to be offered to you. One of the things that you have to understand with the beauty of wood is you will get some of these mineral spots and things like that that you see on this wood. But the first wood right off the bat is alder, and these are just alphabetical. But one of the things that people come in and go, they come into me at the shows and they all of a sudden think, oh my God, this guy's forward. Why does he always have to ask right off the bat where I live? Well, I've been doing this 35 years. All you have to do is tell me the city and I know what I'm dealing with, like Hudson. Hudson, every house in Hudson seems to have oak as far as their trim, and they're absolutely tired of that oak, but they say, you know what, I can't afford, or I don't want to get rid of all this oak, but what can I do in my kitchen to really give me a nice feel and complement all this oak without having to put another oak kitchen in? Well, you know what? Alder is your answer. And alder is an absolutely beautiful hardwood. It's out of the maple family, the Pacific Northwest, and it's going to give us that beautiful, beautiful country feel. And you can also do the knotty. You can see up there, you can do knotty alder if you want that real rustic piece. So alder's a great opportunity. Now, when I'm going through these woods here, I don't recommend, and I would not paint any of these. So I'll talk about the ones that I would paint. Cherry, very popular wood. And cherry is a wood that use a lot, and use a lot of it in the traditional things like that. We're going to talk about glazing of woods coming up. One thing about cherry, and cherry all the way, by the way, comes up, I don't know if it'll be on the next slide or not, comes knotty also. So you can do a knotty cherry. The thing about cherry, the difference between cherry and maple and cherry and alder is I refer to the maple is to be more of an out of focus grain pattern. Same thing to a certain extent with the alder, not as much, but when I say that, look how defined that graining and the beauty and richness of that graining is on that cherry. You're not going to see that into your maples and things like that. So why am I saying that today? There's going to be price upcharges on all these woods. So basically, your bigger upcharge would be your cherry. I would say, let's call it anywhere from, with manufacturers, 10 to 15% premium to go to a cherry. Alder, depends on the manufacturer. Let's call it 5 to 10% premium. Maple will be a base price, and your oaks will be a base price. But one thing about cherry that you have to consider, okay, it is going to darken with age. So you have to be understanding. That's why when you see, I'd like to do a lot of times with my clients is get them a fresh door sample so that they can get a feel of how it's going to be coming to them. But with cherry, it's actually good to see an older door sample too, because then you'll see the way it's going to look down the road when it patina's in. Hickory. This is one that's interesting that it's either, this is a love-hate relationship. Hickory I use more in floors, and I really don't do a lot of it in cabinetry, because one of the things I say when I'm working with somebody on a kitchen, can you get up for the next 30 years and really love that kitchen? You'll know a hickory kitchen when you see it, with all that wild graining and pattern to it. But there it is. It's out there for us. I would address that wood more into a floor. You can come up with some very interesting floors with that hickory pattern. Maple. Maple's for two reasons. Number one, maple's it's a beautiful hardwood. It's been around forever. But the one thing I talk about when I've been saying about I wouldn't paint these woods is that the graining is going to bleed through on a lot of these woods. Like that hickory, that grain would, not necessarily the color, but that graining is going to bleed through. And when you paint a cabinet, 99% of you folks out there don't want the graining to see through. That's why maple, okay, is what's referred to as a paint grade wood. Your maples, your poplars, your birch are going to be the paint grade. So what we can do is we can now go, and there's the maple. See what I mean by the out of focus? You don't have that defined focus. The one thing you've got to be very careful about maple, if anybody is thinking in doing a hardwood floor, maybe we should have a webinar on floors. If anybody's interested, you know, shoot me a question, say, hey, sounds like a good idea, or email me. We could do a webinar on flooring. But that's a whole topic. You got to be careful with this maple, people putting down an unfinished maple floor. And then all of a sudden you go and stain it and you've got splotches all over and you're going to be in tears. So the only time I would ever do, you know, the maple with a flooring, I mean, with a, well, yeah, with a flooring would be a pre-finished floor. I utilize Marshall 1 in Mayfield and go with a pre-finish because that'll eliminate all that splotchiness. So that's maple. When people go with the painting of cabinets, which a lot of you do today, you love the you love to have that that painted finish to it. So the next slide, or the next wood, MDF. Why is that there? That's not a wood. This is a good one. Okay. So one of the things is that somebody has asked for a wood floor webinar. Greg, we'll do it for you. Okay. So I'll add that to the list. So one of the things that the MDF does, remember we talked about being by the water, being by this or that. One of the things that you can do when you select a door, and I'm glad I'm on this with the MDF, when we start looking at door styles, if you guys are taking notes, this is a big one to take a note on. There's two ways that your doors come. They come mortise and tenon, and they come mitered. So I'll talk about that when I show you a door style. But what happens is when you get into these homes over a period of time, if you have painted cabinetry or if you have painted finishes, you're going to get a slight movement. Like I remember I talked about up front. So you're going to get cracks, minimal cracks at your joints in your doors. You'll have, it happens. You can't avoid it. You're going to have it. You look around your house right now, if you have painted trim, you're going to see it. But and the reason is that I would go after a mortise and tenon door before I go after a miter door is mortise and tenon doors, the movement is a lot less. They move a lot less. So let's say we have an issue and we're really anal about that, or we live by a lake, or we just don't want to have to deal with that. You can have your doors made not out of wood, but out of MDF. Usually a cabinet manufacturer is going to have one or two doors that are going to be MDF. They're not going to move. You're not going to get cracks at the joints and things like that. The MDF is very popular in Europe. My brand Licht, L-E-I-C-H-T. If anybody's interested in modern cabinetry, get on there. You can download their catalog and everything. When you look at all their lacquered doors and those 5-piece looking doors, the odds are they're MDF if they're painted. So that's something. Okay. Then we go to quarter sawn oak and we go to red oak. Quarter sawn gives us that beauty. Look at the chattering. It's basically, I'm not going to get into the detail on it, but look at the way it's cut, or look at what you see there, all those marks and knurl marks and things like that. It's the way that it's cut. It's beautiful, and it's also usually out of white oak. Flooring today, white oak is the most popular, and so if you want something that looks really, really like an old piece of furniture or something, you go after that quarter sawn, and you could use that as a furniture piece or an island piece or something like that. And then there's red oak. Red oak, there's certain times that it's great, there's certain times it's not. Red oak is not very popular. I'm working with somebody on a home office right now, and we're using the red oak because it's absolutely spectacular what we're doing with it. We're staining it with gray with a whitewash. It looks really, really good. So there are certain times that the red oak is going to be really, really nice, but majority of the time it's not a popular wood today. Walnut, there's the winner of the day. We talk about trends for this year. Anybody doing a modern? I'm doing a bathroom right now. Somebody, more and more I'm seeing pictures, people coming to me with walnut because they want more of that modern appearance and they want that walnut. Talk about being in this business a long time. All these trends are now coming around for the second time, and walnut is really popular. You're going to see a ton of it in your house this year and your Pinterest and things like that. It is a premium wood. You usually pay about 15–20% more for it. And then we can get into our exotic woods. Working with somebody right now where do we do some exotic woods? They came in saying, hey, what about that zebra wood? That would drive you nuts. But what about that zebra wood as maybe a bar area? You know, like we pick up a lacquer or we pick up a paint or something, and then we just have that bar area or somewhere, or an island area, or maybe just a cooking zone, be a zebra wood or something. Talk about really, really nice. So we have that now as an opportunity to use as an accent. Okay, so we've talked about construction, we've talked about the styles. Now let's get into finishes. Okay, paint versus stain. Sheen, that's going to be an important one. Hand wiped. This is where now this is where we're going to separate the men from the boys and the women from the girls right here. When we talk about stock versus semi-custom versus custom, it's going to be right on this page. Paint versus stain, the sheen, hand wipe versus machine sprayed, laminates versus lacquers versus acrylics, the laser edge detail with today's laminates, distressing and glazing. Okay, so now paint versus stain. I would say right now we're probably at about 70% paint to 30% stain, maybe 60–40. But one of the things that you really want to make sure, if you're going to be selecting cabinetry and you're going to with paint, make sure you're buying a good product. Do not buy a product that's inferior, right? Because first thing you're going to say to me is, oh, well, is this paint going to chip? Yeah, it's going to chip. And one of the things that you want to do is you want to spend the money for a halfway decent product. Like a lot of these manufacturers, they actually bake that paint on, which really hardens it. And so you really want to find out if you're going to go with a paint, you're going to want something that's going to hold up over the years. Stain, you know, stain, you're not going to have half the issues that you would with the paint. But people do the paint. We give you touch-up kits, we come back and touch it up and things like that. Sheen, this is a big one for you guys. This one I think is very important, and it depends on, again, where you're going to be on the ladder. When you get into the custom, I'm going to give you numbers. And what these numbers mean, they're going to be how much particulates are in that finish. And it starts at 10. What a 10 sheen does on a cabinet, I'm going to make you guys dangerous. When this thing's done and said, you're going to be out there, everybody thinks you've been all over town. Okay, you go after a 10 sheen, you're going to go after a very flat finish. If you guys were at the shows and you looked at Cambria, the countertops, and Caesar stone and things like that, you'd notice it's very popular. They're coming back out now with the flat finish. You guys are wanting that in countertops. They brought it out 5-10 years ago, but you know what? It was a problem because your fingerprints got all over a lot of those finishes and you couldn't get them off on the countertop. So they have since perfected that. With cabinetry on a vertical surface, you don't have that as much, but if you really want a cabinet that does not look it's brand spanking new off the floor and you want to look like it's been in the house forever, that 10 sheen can be really interesting. And then you can go up into about a 20 to 25 sheen, and then you can go into a 35 sheen. A 35 sheen is going to be basically what you see in your semi-custom and your stock cabinets, where you look at them and you can see it has a little bit of a sheen, you know, a sheen to it. Your 20 sheens are still going to look flat with just a little luster to it. So those are the three things. If you want, now, is that important to you? If it's important to you, then that's something where you're going to might categorize yourself up into that more custom end. Then you can go hand wipe versus machine sprayed. One of the things with some of the stains, this would be basically with a stain. When you go with a machine spray, kitchen still looks great, bathroom still looks great. If you do a hand wipe stain with some of your smaller shops and more of your higher end custom things, you can notice that difference, that hand applied stain onto it. 90% of them out there today are going to be machine sprayed. If you're one of my modern friends, you're going to have your choice between laminates, lacquers, and acrylics. Basically, your laminates, you grew up with them, we all grew up with them, you know, they're the laminates that are going to be just the flat panels. You can do wood grains. I tell you, come into my studio sometime and get on that like thing and look at some of these woods that are laminates. I'll guarantee you, you holding it, you're going to have to turn that door around to tell me whether it was wood or whether it was a laminate. The lacquers are really interesting. When you look, and it's hard to explain unless you see it here. If I were to show you a high gloss laminate and have you turn it down and look at that door, it's going to look like it's high gloss just on the surface. But if all of a sudden I showed you a lacquer door, it looks like a mirror, like the depth of the door, it really sinks in, and there's a huge difference on it. And that would be the lacquer. Now, the only difference is, are you willing to spend 4 times the price to get the lacquers? There are some laminates today, and even some lacquered laminates today, that are at lower price groups that are really, really good. So lacquers really aren't as popular today. And then you have your acrylics, where we can get into the acrylics and the high glosses and things like that. I'm a little leery on those because of the scratching, but there's so much things that we can do with these laminates today that we don't have to do the acrylics. But I do have the acrylics here if anybody ever wanted to see them. One other thing I will say about the laminates, a lot of these manufacturers are coming up with, remember I just talked about the countertops have that anti-fingerprint? That's a big thing now with the laminates too, that are offering to minimalize the fingerprints, because people with the matte finishes, they want to be able to go and have a fingerproof area. So doing that. Laser edge detailing. So what we can now do, one of the things people were always turned off about were these laminates and Formica doors, and see that black lined edge. Now with the laser cutting and the edge materials they have, it's very hard to see those outer edges. So if you're one of my modern friends again, you've got all the tools today to have a great, great kitchen with not having all of those downfalls that we had in the past. And then we have distressing and glazing. So let's go through and talk about some of the stuff. Okay, here is a distressing package. With this distressing package, I just threw this door up here to show you some interesting things. Okay, look at what they've done. Let's start with the outer edge. Now, one of the things that you can do with a lot of these manufacturers, this could be a la carte. When you go into a semi-custom, they may say, This is our distressing package, take it or leave it. When you go up the ladder a little bit, you can go and say this. You can go and say, can I have everything but the wormholes? Can I have maybe just the cracks? Can I not do the wear through? So it could be more of an a la carte. I actually have one of my manufacturers where we can go visit the guy doing all this and we can tell him, hey, have a heavy hand on this, not have a heavy hand. And so that, I mean, we can get that custom if you wanted to. Distressing is not as popular today, again, for furniture pieces and things like that. But here, let's go through these. Okay, so first of all, we have the wear through. Now, this could be, doesn't have to be a stain. This could be a painted cabinet, and they could do a paint on paint. So let's say we could have a cream colored top coat, sand through on those outer edges and have that be red. So we could sand down to the red and have that effect, which is interesting, like an antique piece of furniture. So that's called wearing through on your edges. So if you want to sand off your corners, we can do that. Then if you look on the outer edge, you could see some of the chattering. See right there on the left side where we can go and we can distress some of the outer edge profile. Then we could do the cracks. We can do wormholes. So all those things, and there could be certain extents. So is there a piece that we're going to want to do this or not? Look at the door. This is a good example to explain to you what a mortise and tenon door. Look at the seam on that top left. Now they went and did the distressing. They accentuated that. But if you look at that, see how that line is going straight up, not like a picture frame. If you look at that inner edge molding, see how that molding is mitered? That's what I mean by mitered. On the door itself, the framework, you usually always want, in my opinion, to go after what's called a mortise and tenon door so that you don't get the movement. Do you see that all of a sudden on that inner edge detail, that miter? Look at how it's split. See how that gap there? Those are things you want to avoid. That you're not going to be, wood is a natural material. It's going to have movement to it. So that's where I try to avoid the miters if I can. Okay, so that's distressing package. Usually in a distressing package, you're going to spend anywhere from an extra, depends on the package, could be anywhere an extra 5 to 25%. Glazing, I love this. This is a cherry door. And do you notice, look at the island. Do you notice all of the seams where the joints are, how it looks black? So let's put this in layman's terms. And look at the baseboard there. Let's put this in layman's terms. Let's go and put a cherry stain on it. And then let's get black shoe polish. And let's put that shoe polish, going all the way around. That is called a glaze. You wipe it off, you're not going to get it all off. Look at how beautiful a highlight that looks. So it adds a really, really nice touch to it. So that's called glazing. And then highlighting. Do you remember that beautiful country kitchen up front? That had that glazing, that highlighting, dry brushed highlighting on it. So some really nice stuff that we can do in this cabinetry. Door styles. Okay, here's your choices. Again, more choices, the higher the ladder. If all of a sudden you're going to go and buy a stock cabinet, you're not going to get this. But if you start with the semi-custom, like my semi-custom line, gives us a lot of options. Okay, so let's start with number one, the outer edge detail. So if we look at the outer edge detail on a kitchen, like we go back on this slide right now, okay, do you see this outer edge detail right here? Okay, that outer edge detail is saying, hey, I want more of a traditional look. If all of a sudden I squared this edge off, remember that teeter-totter? Now I'm going after a little bit more of a modern feel to it. That's the outer edge detail. So you're going to have your choice. Like with my semi-custom line, you probably have about 6 to 7 of those details, those options. And then we have a second choice. This is important too. If all of a sudden we want that teeter-totter to go look a little more on the modern, those outer edge, not the outer edge, the stiles and rails are usually 2 1/4 to 2 1/2 inches wide. That is a perfect size for a framed inset cabinet, in my opinion. I'm doing a job in Independence right now where we went inset and we kept them at the 2.5 inch. If you go frameless and the doors all of a sudden become bigger in detail, I like to go to 3-inch to 3.25 inch stiles and rails. So if we're teeter-tottering, my friends out there that are going to go and say, John, we want more of that transitional look, leaning towards contemporary, but we still want the shaker style door, what I'm going to recommend to you, let's do a square outer edge detail or just a slight radius. Let's go with a 3.25 inch stile and rail. Then number 3, the center panel. Do we want to have a raised panel in the center? Or, and we'll see these coming up, or do we want to have it be flat? 80% of you out there right now to 90% want it flat. So that's something to think about. Do you see why we're doing this today when we're in sheltering in? You've got a month of choices you have to make here. You know, so now you're going to have stuff to spend your time and go through and really understand and get online and be able to really come out running with this stuff. And then all of a sudden, look at that inner edge detail. Inner edge detail is an interesting one because there's some really fun ones, but people again want more simplistic. Like you guys coming back to me, what you would not like about that door. I can tell you right now, there's 2 things that you would not like about this door today. You would not like that center raised panel, and you would not like that heavy molding. That was really popular and still is. I mean, their kitchens are absolutely beautiful with it. But today, most people that are approaching me are saying, can we simplify it a little bit? I've done a lot of kitchens with that molding and that. I absolutely love it. But it's all in the eye of the beholder too. Okay, now there's that framed inset cabinetry. This comes 2 different ways. If we want to have the frame, there's the glazing. See the glazing on the left, by the way? See the bead board and see the, I'm going to talk about this beading in a second, but see how the glaze got caught up there? It adds that nice accent to it. That's a cherry door too on the left. But now all of a sudden, notice that bead. You have your choice when you do your kitchen. If you're going to have it look very traditional, do you want the bead or do you not? Same price usually, but one gives you more of a mission style or a shaker style, and the other is going to give you more of a furniture feel. So you have your choice when you do that with most manufacturers. Do you have the bead or do you not? But that's inset cabinetry. Basically, the door is sticking flush with the frame. Okay, here's our styles. Now, as far as overlay and insets and things like that, on the left is the standard overlay. This is what you're going to find, and this is what I'm just tearing out left and right of your kitchens. This was popular in the 70s and the 80s. A lot of times you go into you want to get some really inexpensive stuff at Lowe's or Home Depot, like for a vanity in a basement or things like that. You'll see what's called standard overlay, and that's with the door will be going and sitting right on top of the frame. And then we can go and we can do a 3/8 inset. A 3/8 inset is, there's your frame, it's all exposed, but now the door, see how it doesn't look as clunky. Now they take the door and they route out 3/8 of an inch on the back side. So when that door is on that frame, it only looks 3/8 of an inch thick, not 3/4. It doesn't look as bulky. Both standard overlay and 3/8 inset, I can never remember the last time I ever sold one of those, but they're out there for you guys if you want that. What you need to know is under everything when you go out there, and so you can understand these terms. Then we have the full overlay. Again, the full overlay and the frameless on a door style alone are going to look very similar, but that's the detailing. Okay, and then here we have the flat panel. One thing I have to mention on the flat panel, anybody out there, one of the things you have your choice on when you order, or at least ask. Let's say we wanted that modern walnut look when I'm doing that kitchen and bathroom in North Royalton, where they had the choice on that walnut that they selected. Did they want the grain to run vertical, or did they want the graining to run horizontal? Okay, so please, let them know which way you want it to. One of the things is the higher you go up the ladder, the more they will book match those veneers. Like the company in Europe I represent, they'll actually on a pallet, on a vertical pallet, they will go and line up all the doors and have all the graining so it all runs through beautifully. So that's something. There's the most popular one in the middle today, recessed panel. And you can see there, it has a little more of a detail on the inner edge profile, but that's that square edge I was talking about. There's the wider stiles and rails. There's the recessed center panel. And the only thing is that inner edge detail is a little too, for a lot of people, is a little too decorative today. And then we go to the right, there's a raised panel. The higher you get up the ladder, again with the cabinetry, the more options you're going to have with that raised panel. There's some really nice raised panel looks out there today. When you go down the ladder, basically you're not going to have that inner edge choice, that panel choice. Notice also you have the glazing on that door there. That's it. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Again, my phone number is, if anybody has questions one-on-one they wanted to ask me, just call me. And do me a favor, this was my first ever webinar. How did I do? Is there anything next week that I can improve on? So either shoot me an email or just click on the question thing, John, this is what you can do better, this is what you did well, things like that. If anybody has any questions or anything, anybody ever needs help with designing, just give me a call. And I'm happy to help any which way. I will add, Greg, I'll add that webinar. We'll see if anybody else is interested in the flooring one. I think that's an important one. That's a whole topic there, talk about flooring. And so I'm glad you did that. So if we can get other people also to chime in. Otherwise, thank you. Next week is going to be, let me just read off the next couple of weeks for people. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep you all, I think what I'm going to do is just create a master list. So instead of just replying to the one, next week we are going to go with the kitchen layout. That's going to be a fun one. I think I might wing that one. We'll see. I think I'm going to design a kitchen right for you on the CAD and showing you the guidelines as I go. And that one I think I'm going to wing. I'm going to have a lot of fun with that one too. And then the 18th, again, we're going to go to accessorizing. That's a big one. And then if you want to take my class, like we talk about for 4 hours, on the 18th. And then we get into bathrooms and the home office. Home office was a big one. You guys, a lot of you applied, signed up for that home office, and that's really important. And bathroom is really popular too. And if you're bored, join in anyways. Okay, thank you very much. I'll look forward to any responses would be welcome, and look forward to next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.